So it's very common when you put fish in a new tank that the fish are going to hide, because especially in a big tank like this where there's a lot of space, the fish feel exposed and stressed when there's not many fish around. So there's quite a fair few fish in this tank, but as you get more fish, the fish feel like it's safer, and then the fish will come out and the fish will tend to be less aggressive. They'll tend to get along better, and they'll tend to be happier when there's more fish in the tank. So I've just tested the water and there's no ammonia. There's basically no nitrite. There's no nitrate. The pH is nice and alkaline. The KH was about 5 and the GH was nearly 0. So I can fix the GH today by putting in a whole lot of GH powder, and I'm going to add some more good bacteria just to help stabilize the situation. And then we're ready to add some more fish after we put the new filter on. So now I'm going to go and tip this in the aquarium. This whole bucket will be required to do this tank, to raise the GH. And raising the GH will add mineral salts and various things that will help the immune system of the fish. And then we need to get some more fish in here because some of the other fish are hiding, which is normal behavior. As we get more fish, then they'll all start coming out more and interacting more. But these two are very happy. Install a new filter on this tank. Test up the water, see what the water's like. Put the new filter in and see if we're ready for new fish. Now, if you're installing a high flow filter like this Oasa one that I'm installing, this pipe is really worth its while. It's a non-kink pipe. So most flexible pipes will just sort of kink over, and it's really important that you have a very good diameter, because a good open diameter is going to allow very good water flow. If you have a smaller diameter pipe and you try and pump a lot of water through it, you're going to have a lot more friction loss, and you're not going to pump anywhere near as much volume of water. Even though the pressure might be higher and it might look very powerful, it's actually going to be a whole lot less water going through it. So this sort of pipe, you're paying a lot more for it, but it's much more durable. It doesn't kink, and it's going to allow you to pass a lot more water. What's really important is when you install pumps, which have got multiple size outlets, if you're going to use this one, because your pipe's really big, you got to make sure that you cut these off. So you want to cut these off, so then therefore you're not getting friction loss through here, and you get the full amount going through there. You think you're funny, hey?
Yeah.
You think you're funny? Now, anytime you're installing something on your aquarium, you really want to look at the power rating, because if you look at the power rating of something like this, it uses basically no electricity at all. If you look at the power rating of like sort of pool pump style filters, the amount of power they use is absolutely phenomenal, and you'll end up spending an absolute fortune on power. So replacing for good quality low voltage units that use small amount of power, especially like the eco type stuff, you're going to save the money every single year that you'd spend on that. You could buy another one of these every year. So this is an Oasa 31,000, and the way this works is the water comes in through here. So you want to have a nice big thick hose so you don't lose friction loss. Then the water goes through the UV sterilizer, which is in the top. There's a little light there that you got to make sure is on, to make sure the UV's on. And whenever you turn on this unit, you want to have the UV off for a month or so to let all the good bacteria establish in the filter here. And all the good bacteria is going to establish in here. You've got to make sure this O-ring's in place so it doesn't leak. This O-ring's very important. And you pop that like that. Then you can get your bracket, and your bracket's got to go on here like that. Then you can put your outlet, and with your outlet you use the clear one, so you put that in there, and then you put this one here So then you can see that, and that will tell you when the filter needs cleaning, because if it starts going that way, it's dirty. If it's going that way, it's still pumping well. So that goes on here. Every joint has to have an O-ring. And then here, you're going to have a stopper. And then when you want to backwash this filter, all you're going to do is change this. And then you're going to put one of those on here, like this. So you put that there, and then you can switch it to backwash. And then when you switch it to backwash, you can pump on this handle, and that compresses the sponges and cleans the sponges out. And then when all the dirt stops coming out of here, you stop pumping it, and then you switch it back to running again, and that's all you need to do to clean it. They're very, very, very easy filters to clean. And for a very large aquarium like this one that could end up having quite a lot of fish in it, it really is ideal. So once again, it's got a UV sterilizer in it. So it's really important that the UV sterilizer is not run all the time. 60 watt UV, bloody hell. That's very powerful. Fabulous unit. Super cheap to run. Very, very effective unit. Now, one of the most important things about a filter is it's got to create surface agitation. So you can see here that that filter's on, and it's agitating the hell out of the surface, and it's putting all this beautiful oxygen into the water. Now, if this was a bit noisy, we can actually push the pipe down a little bit, and that will reduce the amount of oxygen that's going into the water and reduce the sound a little bit. But because of the position of this aquarium, and with the filtration being outside of the house, it doesn't look like it's a problem. The other thing about having the aeration this severe is that is a possibility of microbubbles. And then if you do see microbubbles, which are little bubbles of water, bubbles in the water, you can push the outlet down a little bit, which will stop that. At this stage, it does not look like it's microbubbles to me. It just looks like it's the sediment that was already in the tank anyway. So the other great thing about a filter outlet is it's really important to see that it's working. The worst thing you can do is have a filter outlet that returns under the water and you can't even tell whether it's on or off. With this one, you're gonna be totally sure that it's running, because you'll totally see it if it's not running. And once this tank clears up, once we give this filter some time and this tank clears up crystal clear, then this feature of the bubbles at the back is actually, I think, going to look really cool. Now, the reason why the water is a little bit cloudy is because this tank was a very established tank and there was a lot of crap in the gravel. So we did a big gravel clean in the fish tank. And the other reason why the water is cloudy is because we've just overhauled this tank, and we've just and now bacteria is starting to grow. And what happens with bacteria is often the first bacteria that starts to grow grows in the water itself, and that bacteria that grows in the water makes the water a little bit cloudy. But then as the tank establishes, then the water should go crystal clear once the good bacteria grows in the filter itself. So this is the back side of this tank, and it's really important that we're watching the water level, because over time the tank will evaporate, and it is amazing how much the water will evaporate. So we do need to keep topping up the water. So there's the filter return, but also right now I've got the hose on, and then the hose is giving the tank a bit of a top up. So we want to make sure that the water's nice and topped up. And there's even a vent just there that I'd, if possible, probably like to have the water flowing through. So I'll leave this topping up for a bit longer, because the pump is actually in there. And the reason why I selected this particular Wasa pump is because it's very high quality German pump, but also it's a dirty run pump, so it shouldn't actually clog up. So you can see the awesome surface agitation as the water is getting re-oxygenated. Because ultimately what's going to happen is the filter here is going to grow heaps of good bacteria in it, and the good bacteria that grows in the filter is going to suck the oxygen out of the water. That's why we want the surface to be broken on the way back in. Now the other thing is that this unit has a UV sterilizer. So what I might do is just turn that UV sterilizer on and see if that helps to clear up the water. But we do not want to leave the UV sterilizer on at this stage, because we need time for the good bacteria to get into this filter. Now this is a 60 watt UV. It's a very, very powerful UV, and it needs to be replaced after about 12 to 18 months of use. In this aquarium, we're not going to need to run the UV all the time because it's an indoor tank, and we're mainly going to use the UV to clear up the water. And most of the time, I would imagine this water is going to be pretty clear. So we'll get a lot of value out of this UV. Because it's also 60 watts, it's going to help reduce parasites as well. So when we're putting new fish in the tank, it's going to be quite good to have this UV going. Once the tank is well established, there is no reason for this UV to be on all the time. So I'd probably recommend regularly turning it off for periods. And then when the tank's really established, there's almost no reason for it to be on. So for now, if it was on for a few days, off for a few days, on for a week, off for a week or whatever, that's totally fine. But we need time for the good bacteria to get into the filter. So the next thing we need to do is just set up this backwash, so then the hose can go off somewhere where it's acceptable. So then when we want to backwash it, we take this off, put the hose on, we can then pump on that, and that will backwash the filter and help with your water change by giving you a water change. And remembering that when you fill the water up again, it's important to check your water, particularly GH and KH and pH. Treat your tank with GH and KH as needed, and make sure you add water ager every time you add new water. So what I'm watching right now is that this here is acting as the sump level, because that is currently a little bit lower than the tank. So the tank's up here and the water's pumping into the tank, and the water is finding its way back to this sump here. So I'm using this sump as the level for the top-ups. So I'm trying to top the water up so this grate here is able to let water back in, and I just want to top it up so that sump area doesn't go down too much. That's the part I'll be looking for, because I don't want that going down and then eventually causing the pump to suck dry, because that can actually damage the pump. So what I'll be requesting is, on a regular basis, this area here is checked, and you fill up the water according to the level in this back area here. Now we're going to add some stability into this aquarium, which is some good bacteria, and it's a very good idea to keep this in the fridge once you've opened it. And what this will do is help to give you good bacteria in your filter, and once the good bacteria is in the filter, then the bacteria will stop growing in the water, and the bacteria that's growing in the water gives it that white, hazy, milky color. And so we'll give this a few days to settle in, and the white, milky, hazy color doesn't affect the fish at all, providing that you've tested the water and found that it's not ammonia that's causing this problem, which this is absolutely not. And then if you do see a bit of green growing in the water, then this tank's got a very powerful UV sterilizer, so you can just turn the UV sterilizer on, or you can just reduce the hours of light that the tank's getting. So getting some fish, some big geophagus would be good for this tank. Something that's going to dig in the sand, because help us turn the sand over and get it nice and clean. But once the water's crystal clear and we see that beautiful feature from the outlet of the filter, this tank's going to look absolutely unreal. Now, I remember when I was a kid, I had a laundry chute, and the laundry chute when I was a kid was one of the best things invented. And this aquarium here in the kitchen has got a feeding chute. So these fish need to start being fed now. When you're fishing new, when you first get brand new fish, it's good not to feed them for the first couple of days. So what I'm doing now is I've turned off the UV sterilizer, because you don't want to have a UV sterilizer running when you add good bacteria. Now what I'm going to do is add some good bacteria to the tank. I'm going to put half this bottle in, and that's going to give us some good bacteria. In a few days' time, once this bacteria has had a chance to stabilize, I'd recommend turning the UV on, and then the UV should help to clear up the water a little bit. And it's best to keep this in the fridge once you've opened it, and maybe in a week's time, just treat that again, and that will help to give the good bacteria. Now there's various foods we've got here. We've got your Spectrum probiotics. That's pretty much the cleanest food on the market. The Spectrum probiotic has a good bacteria in it, and the good bacteria in this food means that when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. So that's an awesome feature. So today I'll just feed them a little bit of this one, because that's about the cleanest food there is. Now when you're feeding the fish, you want to feed them what they eat in 30 seconds. Now what you're going to have to do is put a bit of food in, and then you'll need to go downstairs and have a good look around and make sure the food's all gone in 30 seconds. Because the tank's only new, I'm going to try and keep the feeding quite minimal. So if we fed 5 times a week, I'd be happy. It's really good not to feed every single day. So let's say that you fed that one a few times a week, say 3 times a week. Say you added that one, say 2 times a week, and then every couple of days, maybe add a little bit of these. This is for larger fish to graze on. So as long as the fish don't know what's coming, so one day maybe just that one, maybe those 2 the next day, maybe just that one the following day, maybe just this one the following day, maybe a bit of all of them the next day. It really doesn't matter. But the main food I want going in there is that one. So let's say 80% that one, maybe 20% that one, and wiggle a bit of this in there as well. But the main thing you're looking at is the bellies of the fish. So over time, if you notice the fish getting skinny, then you need to feed more. If over time you notice the fish getting fat, then you need to feed less. And it's important that you pay attention to what fish are getting fat and skinny too. So if it's the big fish getting skinny, then you want to feed a larger pellet. If it's the smaller fish getting skinny, then maybe you need to feed more of a smaller pellet. So it's just something to be aware of, and also be aware that some food floats and some food sinks. So if your fish at the top are getting skinny, maybe go for a floating food. If your fish at the bottom are getting skinny, then maybe go for a sinking food. So you just sort of experiment with what you feed. And if you have your New Life Spectrum probiotics as your main food, have your Dietary color as your next food, and then if you are going to use a wafer, I really go for the Spectrum, because the Spectrum wafer is water stable, so it actually takes a long time to break down, so the fish really get a chance to eat it before it pollutes the water.